Imagine discovering a message written by a human who lived before the first city, before the first kingdom, and before anyone had a written language, but the message was not carved on a wall, a tablet, or a piece of paper. It was hidden inside a small piece of bone that survived longer than entire civilizations. Thousands of years ago, someone sat beside a dying fire during the coldest age humanity had ever faced. Around them was darkness, hunger, danger, and uncertainty. Their world was controlled by seasons they could not change, animals they could not control, and winters that could erase entire groups. But instead of simply surviving another day, this person did something extraordinary. They took a sharp tool, touched it against a piece of mammoth bone, and began making marks. One line, then another, then another. A simple pattern carved into a dead animal. But those tiny marks created a mystery that still follows archaeologists today. Because the question is not just why someone carved a bone 40,000 years ago. The real question is much bigger. What was happening inside the human mind when someone first decided that a thought was important enough to preserve forever? For most of human history, survival depended on memory. A hunter had to remember where animals moved. A family had to remember when certain resources appeared. A group had to understand when the environment would change. Forgetting could mean starvation. A mistake in timing could mean death. Long before humans created clocks, calendars, and computers, they lived inside a world of invisible patterns. The moon changed. Seasons returned. Animals migrated. Plants appeared and disappeared. Nature was constantly sending signals, and humans had to learn how to read them. The engraved mammoth bones discovered from the Ice Age period may represent one of the earliest moments when humans attempted to capture those patterns outside their own minds. Not inside memory, not inside a story passed from one person to another, but physically, permanently. A piece of the world transformed into information. The discovery becomes even more fascinating when we understand what mammoths represented to Ice Age humans. Today, we often see mammoths as extinct giants from a forgotten world. But to ancient people, a mammoth was not just an animal. It was survival itself. A single mammoth could provide enormous amounts of food, materials for tools, bones for structures, ivory for carving, and resources that could help a community survive another brutal season. Mammoths shaped human imagination. They appeared in ancient artwork. Their remains became tools and objects of meaning. They were connected to both survival and symbolism. So when researchers find marks carved into mammoth-related materials, they are not simply looking at scratches. They are looking at evidence of a relationship between humans, animals, memory, and the need to understand the world around them. But here is where the mystery begins. When archaeologists examine these engraved bones, one thing becomes clear. These marks were not accidental. They were carefully made. The person who created them controlled the movement of the tool. They placed the marks intentionally. Some patterns appear organized, with repeated lines and deliberate spacing. This suggests that the person was not randomly decorating a piece of bone. They were creating something that carried meaning. But what meaning? That is the question science has not completely answered. Some researchers believe these markings could have been an early counting system. Perhaps someone was recording numbers, successful hunts, important events, or quantities of resources. Others have suggested something even more fascinating. Maybe these marks represented cycles of time, the changing phases of the moon, the arrival of seasons, the movement of animals, a primitive calendar created by people who lived thousands of years before agriculture and written civilization. If true, this would completely change the way many people imagine ancient humans, because it would mean that the desire to measure time did not begin with farmers, kings, or astronomers. It began with ordinary people trying to survive in a dangerous world. But the truth is more complicated, and perhaps even more interesting. Scientists cannot simply look at these marks and declare, this was the first calendar. The evidence does not allow that certainty. Archaeologists know the marks were intentional. They know ancient humans were capable of symbolic thinking. They know people were recording information long before modern civilization. But exactly what every mark represented remains hidden. It could have been a calendar. It could have been a counting system. It could have been a personal record. It could even have been something modern humans have not yet imagined. And maybe that uncertainty is the most powerful part of the discovery. Because this bone is not only about ancient humans. It is about something deeply connected to everyone alive today. The human fear of forgetting. Think about your own life. Photos on your phone. Notes saved on your computer. Reminders on your calendar. Messages sent to people you care about. Almost everything modern humans create is an attempt to fight against one problem. Time destroys everything unless we find a way to preserve it. The person holding that mammoth bone thousands of years ago had the same instinct. They wanted something to remain after the moment disappeared. That small piece of bone may represent one of humanity's earliest conversations with the future. A person who knew they would not live forever, but wanted an idea, a memory, or a discovery to survive beyond them. They did not have books. They did not have computers. They did not have written language. They only had a tool, a piece of bone, and a desire to make something impossible happen, to send a message across time. And somehow, after thousands of years, that message reached us. But what if the most important discovery hidden inside this bone is not the answer it gives us, but the question it forces us to ask? Because the deeper scientists look into these ancient markings, the more they reveal something unexpected. The first humans who created these symbols were not simply reacting to the world around them. They were trying to understand it. They were looking for patterns inside chaos. And that ability, the ability to observe something invisible, remember it, and transform it into information, may be one of the greatest turning points in human history. For thousands of generations, humans survived by carrying knowledge inside their minds. A parent taught a child where to find food. A hunter remembered the paths of animals. An elder remembered the signs of changing weather. But human memory has limits. A person can forget. A generation can disappear. A disaster can erase knowledge forever. The engraved bone represents a revolutionary idea. What if information did not have to die with the person who discovered it? What if a thought could survive even after its creator was gone? That idea may sound ordinary today because modern humans live surrounded by stored information. We write books. We save photographs. We record videos. We create databases that can preserve knowledge for centuries. But before any of that existed, there was a much simpler technology, a human hand making a mark. A single line carved into bone may seem insignificant, but that line represents something extraordinary. It means a human looked at the world, understood that something mattered, and decided that it was worth preserving. The mark was not just an object, it was a message. However, the mystery becomes even deeper when we examine the possibility that these marks were connected to time itself. Ice Age humans depended on timing more than many modern people realize. They needed to know when animals moved across landscapes. They needed to understand seasonal changes. They needed to recognize repeating patterns in nature. Their survival depended on predicting the future. Imagine living thousands of years ago on a frozen landscape. There are no weather reports. No calendars hanging inside a shelter. No digital reminders. The only information available comes from the environment itself. The position of the sun, the changing moon, the movement of animals, the arrival of cold winds. Every signal matters. In that world, the ability to track time was not a luxury. It was survival intelligence. This is why some researchers have considered the possibility that certain engraved bones may have helped ancient humans track cycles. Perhaps they recorded repeated observations. Perhaps they counted events. Perhaps they marked something connected to the natural world. The idea is fascinating because it suggests that humans were trying to organize reality long before they built civilizations. But there is another possibility that may be even more powerful. What if the bone was not created to measure the outside world? What if it was created to preserve an inside world? Because humans do not only record things they need. They record things they care about. A hunter may have marked important moments. A person may have tracked experiences that only they understood. A symbol may have represented a memory, a journey, a challenge, or something meaningful to their group. The bone may not have been a calendar hanging from the wall of an ancient shelter. It may have been something far more human, a personal connection between one mind and another mind separated by thousands of years. And this is where the discovery becomes emotionally powerful. The person who created those marks disappeared. Their voice disappeared. Their name disappeared. Their world disappeared. The animals they followed are gone. The landscape they knew has changed completely. Almost everything about their life has vanished. Except this. A few lines carved into bone. A tiny piece of evidence that says, I was here. I noticed something. I wanted someone to remember. This changes the way we see prehistoric humans. For a long time, people imagined Ice Age humans as primitive survivors focused only on food and danger. But these discoveries tell a different story. They show humans who were curious. Humans who searched for patterns. Humans who thought about the future. Humans who wanted their knowledge to outlast them. The distance between them and us is much smaller than we often imagine. The tools changed. The world changed. The technology changed. But the mind behind it remained surprisingly familiar. The same brain that carved marks into Mammoth Bone is the brain that created calendars, scientific discoveries, computers, and space exploration. The same curiosity that pushed an Ice Age human to record information is the curiosity that pushes modern humans to explore the universe. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about this ancient bone is not that it may be the world's first calendar. Perhaps the real discovery is that humans have always been searching for the same thing. A way to understand time. A way to preserve knowledge. A way to leave something behind after we are gone. Thousands of years ago, beside a fire in a frozen world, someone made a few simple marks on a piece of mammoth bone. They probably never imagined that another human would study those marks in the distant future. They probably never imagined that their small action would create questions that would survive longer than their entire civilization. But that is exactly what happened. The mammoth disappeared. The Ice Age ended. The person who carved the bone is long gone. Yet their message remains. Not because they conquered the world. Not because they built monuments. But because, for one brief moment in human history, they chose to remember. And maybe that was the beginning of everything. If you want to uncover more forgotten stories hidden inside humanity's past, subscribe and continue exploring the mysteries that shaped who we became.